Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the architect of faith, Noah's walk with God. Now, we've all heard the Sunday school version of the ark and the animals, right? But today, we're doing something a bit different. We're stepping way back to look at this strictly from God's point of view. Picture a world completely falling apart. What did God actually see when he looked down at this one guy? Let's find out. Think about this for a second. How do you stand firm when the entire world is moving in the exact opposite direction? I mean, really put yourself in that headspace. Imagine being literally the only person in your entire city, maybe your entire culture, holding on to a specific conviction. The psychological weight of that isolation, it's just immense. Setting that mental stage is absolutely crucial for understanding who Noah really was, and more importantly, what God saw in him. Okay, so that brings us to section 1, grace in God's eyes.
Right out of the gate, Genesis hits us with this incredibly profound statement. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Now pay super close attention to that word, found. It might seem like a minor detail, but honestly, it sets up a massive theological distinction in how God operates and how he views us.
Because finding grace means receiving something that begins entirely with God. See, Noah didn't just punch a moral time card to earn this through pure merit, right? Grace always initiates from the Creator. It's a gift. Yet from God's viewpoint, looking down, he clearly saw something deeply distinct in Noah's character that made him the perfect recipient for that grace. So what exactly was God seeing?
Well, that leads us right into characteristic number 2, walking with the Creator.
The very next verse basically gives us the answer key. It says, Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. That specific phrase right there, walked with God, that is the primary trait that caught God's eye. We aren't talking about some passive background belief here. This was an intimate, highly active, everyday kind of walk. On a practical level, this involved 4 distinct things. First, living in continuous fellowship. Second, actively listening to his voice. Third, and guys, this one is huge, trusting his word above human opinion. And fourth, ordering your entire life around his will. This is exactly what God saw Noah doing, all while the rest of the world was just, walking blindly according to its own desires.
So this really illustrates the core dynamic at play. God wasn't merely a part of Noah's life, like a hobby or a weekend routine. God was the absolute center of his life. And this total recentering, that's the exact mechanism that allowed Noah to consistently move toward God, even while his entire society was rapidly running in the opposite direction.
Which brings us to part 3, fearing God over society.
You really have to look at how Genesis describes the generation right before the flood. It says, every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. I mean, wow, that is an incredibly bleak picture. We are talking about extreme corruption, violence, immorality, and just sheer rebellion dominating the daily environment. Imagine waking up surrounded by that every single day without a single like-minded neighbor to lean on for support.
So this begs a really vital psychological question, doesn't it? Most people become like their environment. It's just human nature. We adapt, we conform to survive. So, why didn't Noah?
Well, it basically came down to a very stark choice. Public opinion versus God's opinion. Noah resisted his corrupt environment because he feared God far more than he feared being the odd man out. Public opinion demanded this conformity to chaos, right? But God's opinion was the unmoving standard. By dropping his anchor into the Creator, Noah literally became impervious to the peer pressure of an entire planet. And that brings us to part 4, faith in the unseen. To really grasp the gravity of this, we have to pull a revelation from the New Testament book of Hebrews. It says, by faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark. Do you see the crucial point there? Noah was acting on a warning about a catastrophic judgment that had literally never been seen before in human history. You really have to put yourself in the historical context here. No rainstorm of this magnitude had ever occurred, so building a massive maritime vessel on dry land for a weather event no human had ever even experienced? To his neighbors, it must have looked like absolute insanity. The world mocked him relentlessly for it. But Noah, he just believed.
Look at the stark contrast here. On one side, you have the world. They heard the exact same warnings, but they mocked and they ignored. On the other side, you have Noah, who believed and obeyed. Faith was the ultimate separator here. It wasn't just some private feeling he kept to himself. The massive physical action of building that ark proved his internal belief to God.
Finally, we arrive in Section 5, your standard of truth.
The summary of this entire epic story is actually really simple. While society moved away from God, Noah moved toward God. It's a complete masterclass in not letting your environment dictate your morality and consciously choosing a higher standard, even against an overwhelming tide.
Which leaves us with one final, thought-provoking question to close out our explainer today. Whose standard do you use to measure your own life? Are you walking to the drumbeat of public opinion, or are you anchored to something significantly higher? Think about your own walk this week. Keep asking those big questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.